right, so we ended last week's video out with loss of oil pressure. And so far, I have gotten the oil pan off, took a piece of metal to the face while reaching down for a piece of wood, gouged my cheek over here, scratched my glasses. But got the O-ring out. So we're gonna test this and see if this is the problem. I think it is, because if y'all look right there, we got a gouge in the O-ring. So I think we were losing pressure because of that O-ring right there. So that's gonna be the first thing we test. Put a new O-ring in it, bolt this whole thing back together, fill it back up with fluid, and test that. So I got a fresh O-ring here, and I'll show you. So they're both the red O-ring, and you can see that the one on the left has shrunk a lot, which that's going to allow a lot of oil to pass, as well as at some point it got that nick in the side of it, so that's going to allow oil to pass. So by putting this O-ring on here, this is going to do a lot of good for us. So I'm going to go ahead and put this O-ring on, fill the truck up with oil, and see how the PSI is on the gauge. So let's do that right now. The oil pressure problem has been completely resolved. That was a solution to the issue. Whenever I did that, took it on a little test drive, went around the corner over here to the gas station, filled the truck up, and the gas gauge worked. It filled up, said we had a full tank, and then down here, the fitting that I put into the tank to add return started leaking, pouring. So I ended up having to drain some gas, but at this point, the gas gauge started intermittently working and then completely cutting out. So now with that being said, I have no gas gauge, and I filled up the tank. After I repaired that leak, got that fixed, had to make a rubber bushing to go in there. See if I can climb up in here and get y'all a shot where you can kind of see the bushing. There. So the Teflon was there, but I made the rubber bushing to go in between. And there's one on both sides of the tank, smashing the metal between it, so that way it 100% seals to the tank. So that problem is solved. But once again, now we have a fuel gauge reading issue. I've already pulled the gauge cluster out of the dash, checked that everything's working on that side. It's somewhere back here, either the sending unit itself or one of the connections back here at the back. Let me just double check the wiring harness. Radio, coil, horn, headlights, door locks, power windows, backup and cruise, signal, turn signal, radio, heat, electric fan, fuel pump. It's in good shape. Gauges. Oh, look at that. Oh. Well, I'll be dipped. That little thing didn't work perfectly, but it did work. And that one's in good shape, but there's nothing that should be running through gauges other than that one single. Yeah, I mean, everything in here is in perfect working order. Yeah, now I'm gonna head to the back of the truck and start looking at that, seeing if we can solve the problem. So let's head to the back. Fire it up. Reverse. So I did figure out, y'all heard that beep just now. The guy that I had tune it, I've reached out to him. I'm waiting on him to get back with me. That he did all my deletes out of my system for the see, it's going crazy, and it's going to keep doing that for a couple minutes. There is a way on my gauge cluster on this little monitor to shut off and freeze all of these things, all of these warnings, but the warnings are for how many miles you have until empty. Okay, well, nothing is running through the computer for that anymore, so I need to shut that off. And knock sensors. My standalone harness does not have knock sensors, and they're not plugged in on the truck anymore, so that is now irrelevant. But the computer's trying to find that, so I have to have him tune out those couple of items so that way we can have it work properly. But I'll show you. Got good oil pressure, constant. And there's our temperature, 192. Good oil pressure. But fuel gauge is reading 0. See, we're getting those warning lights popping up there. And our check engine light is coming on, and all right, so I just had everything all apart inside of there and was able to look from here and see the gauge on the inside of the truck, turn the key on, watch it, play with the sending unit. If it's unbolted, I'm able to get it to work. I don't know if it's hitting something internally, but that doesn't make any sense because then it would just hold at the one that it's at. But it drops to 0 whenever it gets inside. I don't know what's going on with it. Because whenever I take it out, or if I just loosen it and I pull it out just a little bit, I can get it all to work. But the minute I put it in all the way and bolt it down, it stops working right. So I'm not sure what's going on with it. I guess I'm just going to have to put a new sending unit on the tank, or on this pump. The pump and everything works great, and I've already modified all that stuff, and it works perfect. I just need a sending unit. And I'm able to find one. Rock Auto has one. It sucks. I really don't want to go that route. But, I mean, if it's what I got to do to get the fuel gauge to work, it's what I got to do. Because you got to have a fuel gauge. Until then, I'll just keep it full, I guess. So, let me put all this back together and we'll move on to the next thing for now. All right, so now I'm working on the cowl vent cover. We went ahead and got the AC stuff on the inside all wired up. So now we've got that blowing. I'm sure you can hear it. But to finish that, I've got to run a wire from here, which is my pressure switch, down to the compressor. So I'll do that tomorrow, because tonight's project, it's supposed to rain tomorrow. So tonight's project is this cowl vent cover. So I went ahead and cut out a piece of metal. Now we just laid this against the hood to get the radius, so that'll match the windshield. And then I can trace, once that's cut, then I can come back and mark it all the way along this side to make a matching radius. I already have the lines marked where the windshield wipers are. So once I'm done, I'll be able to come back and cut the spots out for the windshield wipers to set in. But right now, let's get going on cutting this piece into a U shape. So I just got this side all radius cut out. And what I did was I set my gauge here to, see if you can see it, 4.5. And then I set it against there and I traced it all the way along. So now I'll cut that edge and then we can flip it over, find our marks, which we got one right there, one right there. They're real faint on the camera, but I can see them. And that'll be where I need to notch out for the windshield wipers. Then we could test fit this panel and radius the corners, make sure there's no sharp edges, and then we can drill and punch this on the front of the truck. So now we're gonna measure across here, and we've got 3 1/4 on that one. Same over there. So what we'll do is come over here, split that in half, come out and mark it, and that'll be how far back the triangle needs to sit. And we'll come over here and measure, and that is 2 3/4. So 2 3/4 out, 3 1/4 across, and we can make our layout on here and then draw it on there, do it on both sides, zip it out, then we can set this in place. All right, so there we go. Got it made. Now we'll get some screws and zip it down. And the reason why I'm just screwing it down is if I ever need to access that hole that I made right there to get to the bolt that's on the back side of this hood hinge, I can still access it without riveting this down or welding it down. I can still pull this off and get it to it. So let me get some screws and get that mounted. So last night I did put a clear on that cowl vent cover, so that's all fully completed now, and if I ever need to get in there and access anything, I can. It looks like we've got one of our brand new wiper blades coming apart here, and we have been using them today. Can it just pop in here? Yeah, there's that side. So that's back in. I figured out if you bend this all the way back, you can make it pop in and out. But, so there's that. Now, what I'm gonna work on is, I wanna seal up these vent windows. I don't care to spend the money to replace the seals in it. Honestly, I'm not gonna use them. I mean, I'm putting AC and heat and everything in the truck, so I don't need to use. Hey, look at this. Already been on the road. I mean, that's what I built it for, was to use, and I'm excited to see that stuff in there because it means we're actually using the truck and it's not just sitting somewhere. But for right now, what I need to do is get the hood popped so that way we can start looking at pulling vacuum on this engine for the AC system. I need to run one last wire from here to the compressor and do that, but that's fine. I can do that while this system is vacuuming down. So let me set up the gauges and everything and set up the vacuum pump and let that start pulling vacuum and let it sit. It's got to sit for an hour pulling vacuum, and then once you shut that off, it has to hold for an hour to show the fact that you're holding vacuum. So I need to get that set up so we can start pulling vacuum. All right, so I've got the gauges pulling. They're already pulling vacuum, and vacuum pump is running. So now that all that's set up, I'm gonna let that sit here and work, do its job, and I'll move on to something else. So I need to install turn signal indicators because the light bulb that was on this indicator just stayed on, and I tried wiring it differently and it was actually wired 100% correctly, but the bulb was just staying on. So I just popped the bulb out of there. It had a little halogen bulb in it, and we still have indicator wires back here behind the dash. So I got some of these little LED turn signal deals, the same as I got my high beam and my check engine over here. So I'm gonna punch 2 more holes and mount some turn signal indicators. The AC is I got the last little bit of wiring done, went to go charge the system, and whenever I disconnected, I saw we had a vacuum leak, or we lost vacuum. So figured out what it is. I've got 2 lines that I've got to rebuild. It's the lines that I was trying to adapt to the core support, or not the core support, the lines that I was trying to adapt to the condenser out of the Crown Vic. So I'll have to rebuild those. That's fine. I've got heat, and we're coming into the winter. But now we've got turn signal indicators. So, got that done. Check that off the list. I think let's go to speakers next. Well, I just went ahead and then installed my bumper lights, and I put those on a switch. So that way, if you put it in reverse, you can pull the switch, turn them on. Besides that, if you need lights back here, you can just turn them on also. So we got bumper lights. So still on the to-do list is the cover for that, bed liner, the inside of the bed, speakers. I'm gonna have to order speakers because I installed one and then it was blown out. So I just stopped right there, because obviously if one's bad, they're probably not great. They were free speakers, so I gave them a shot. One of them was junk, so they're all junk. So besides that, we have the AC piece to finish, speakers, inside of the bed, and then we got some tricks up our sleeve coming for this truck. But next week we'll do a little bit more. Until then, I've been daily driving this thing for about 3 days now. I mean, I couldn't have picked a better pickup to put together. It has been absolutely great. It rides great, sounds great. It's not overbearing inside of the cab. Everything is comfortable. The way the seat sits, the truck drives good. It's just a great overall pick. It came out great. And for very, very, very little money into it, this has been an excellent build. I still got a couple more things I want to do. I think the altitude needs to be changed a little bit, and besides that, we just got a couple more little tricks here and there that we're going to take care of and show you all along the way, and some things that I've never done before that we're going to learn on. And man, I hope y'all are stoked with this truck as I am, and seeing it come together, seeing it run and drive, seeing it go down the highway. Man, I hope y'all are falling in love with it just like I am. So besides that, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.